Today's interview is with Michael McDonald. Michael McDonald is a wholesaler who lives in Vegas, but does his wholesaling out of state in Nebraska. So really cool in how he started out, what he did starting out. That's a really interesting story. So you guys want to check that out, and just how he scaled his business to where it is today, and it's continuing to grow. So along with a lot of great little tips and tricks and ideas about how to be successful. So really enjoyed this interview today. Stick around for all of that. As always, like and subscribe on Wrestling with Real Estate, the YouTube channel. Go to the WWRE Podcast and give me a 5-star rating and write me a review. It gives, it really does help us build this platform and continue to pump out great content for you guys. So please go ahead and do that. And I'm looking to speak to as many of you as possible. If you're interested in real estate, in whatever aspect that is, I'd love to hop on a call and have a conversation with you and see if there's any way whatsoever I can help you. So there's going to be a link in the description down below, or go to wrestlingwithrealestate.com and sign up there. But before all of that, enjoy today's awesome interview with Michael McDonald. Hello and welcome to Wrestling with Real Estate, where we look to chokeslam all your real estate problems. I'm your host, former WWE wrestler and now Cirque du Soleil performer, and of course, multifamily real estate investor, Barri Griffiths. Now today we're joined by Michael McDonald. What's up, Michael?
What's going on, Barry? Good to be here.
Yeah, good to have you, man. Good to have you. I had the pleasure of being on your show last week. We filmed it Christmas Eve, right? And it's
right.
It's the 29th today, so not quite a week, 5 or 6 days ago. So that was a fun one, but excited to have you on that side of the mic and me on this side of the mic for this one. So I get to ask the questions this time. So it'll be a fun one, man. I really enjoyed that. So excited for this. And Michael's also in Las Vegas, just like myself. We could have done this in person, but it's, we did it over Zoom. It's it's going to work out, I'm sure. So before we jump into the conversation and talk about all that good stuff, do you want to give us an idea about your background, what you've been up to, and what your current focus is?
Absolutely. Yeah, Barry, thanks again for having me on. This is exciting. I had a blast on your podcast last week. So a little bit about myself. I am from small town Nebraska. Grew up in what they didn't even consider a town. It was actually a village, is what they called it, village of Bellwood. So I grew up, not really knowing what I wanted to do, but I ended up in Lincoln, Nebraska for college. Went to college at community college there, studied nutrition, and I found out that working at a hospital, teaching people how to eat healthy was not going to provide the living that my family and I wanted. And so I learned about real estate through one of those seminars that come through town, how to make money in real estate with no money down. And so took the free course, which basically was an entry into, you need the next course in order to be successful, right? So my buddy talked me into going. I ended up showing up and they fired me up. They sold me 100%. And I'm like, man, this wholesaling thing that they keep talking about sounds really almost too good to be true. But I have to find out for myself. I was looking for something more. I kind of like you, Barry. I knew that going to a corporate job for 40 years is just not something that I was going to do. I knew there was more to life than that. So ended up going to the 3-day event, cost a couple grand, no big deal. And then at that 3-day event, they sold a mentorship package. And that mentorship package ended up costing us, I think, $25,000. Which, looking back at the time, just as a reference, is I didn't have any money. I was actually $20,000 in student loan debt. And so $25,000 in credit cards is definitely not something that fit into the budget, especially after just getting married. So long story short, that's how I got my start in real estate. Shortly after I invested that money, my wife and I found out she was going to be having a baby. So I basically was in a position where I was working full time. I was in major debt. I had to figure out how to make money in real estate. So I put my back against the wall. So the first year in real estate, I focused mainly on just wholesaling. And so I was able to find deals and assign those properties at a discount to an investor. So did okay the first year. It took me about 6 years of failing forward to find my first deal, make some money. My first deal ended up netting us 23 grand. And at that point in time is when I knew that this real estate thing was the real deal. And I haven't looked back ever since. It was faith to fact. And a year and a half ago, I quit my job and formed a partnership with a guy who's in Lincoln. We flip houses, we wholesale houses, we bought apartment buildings. I moved to Las Vegas and I do this all virtual now.
Yeah, really cool. Isn't it amazing how these they have the system down, right? Like these 3-day courses, like these free seminars, and then you sign up for like they have. I think how they use the process. They have a 1-day free seminar, then you sign up for the 3-day. That costs, like you said, a few grand, and then from there they upsell you, right? They sell you on the dream and like how you can make all this money, and then comes the $25,000 course from that, right? And they've got the system down, right?
They're good. They are good salespeople. I can tell you that much. I don't even know if they do it themselves. They're just really good salespeople.
Yeah, and that's what I always wondered about people selling these programs is like, if they were that good at real estate, why are they selling all these other programs, right? But at the same, but like, I'm not saying, we're kind of knocking them a little bit, but at the same time, right? Had you not done that, right? And that's a lot of money, and they were, they're always willing to let you pay on credit card. That's another thing, right? Oh, you have no money. Oh, you can pay on credit card.
I did not have a $25,000 credit limit when I met those people.
Yeah.
They talked about this fancy thing called seed capital. I was like, what's seed capital? I want capital. And so they're like, oh, we'll just go out and get you apply it for 6 cards and say you make this much money, and then we'll just get you all this credit. And so they did. And 6 cards later, I had a $50,000 line of credit. And so the rest is history, really.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But the thing is as well, right? So yeah, that, it's not ideal what they do, I think, and for everyone, especially people who don't take action, right? But for a lot of people, like, who want to be in real estate and are willing to take action, a lot of times it does work out, right? Because they do teach stuff, right? They don't just take your money and run away, or for the 99% of the time they don't. But so they teach you stuff, right? And then it's up to kind of you to do that, right? So I'm not saying for anyone not to do it. Just be very careful. Make sure that, for one, you're spending your money on something that you want to learn about and that you know that you want to be involved with. And then secondly, make sure that also you're going to apply yourself to it, right? Now, clearly you were going to do that, right? You had no choice, I guess, at that point, right? Student debt and this debt, right? You had to make something happen, but yeah, that's pretty cool. So starting out, how hard was it starting out, right? Because they teach you, they sold you the dream, right? No money needed, wholesaling, you just find a deal and then you assign that contract and then boom, you're off to the races, right? But what was the reality of it starting out?
The reality is there's a lot of people doing this, and I have a very abundant mindset, and I'm like, oh, well, if he can do it, or if they can do it, I can surely do it. But the reality is, Barry, after about 3 months, maybe 4 months, my wife started looking at me, and we had 30-some thousand dollars on credit cards, and my wife is like, honey, is this gonna work? Like, what's going on here? Like, you're not making any money and you're spending money on marketing and stuff like that. What's going on? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, this is tough. Like, I've made a lot of offers and I'm doing what they tell me to do, but I was doing it all wrong because they were trying to teach an old school method at that time to make offers on MLS properties. And you bought properties off MLS. I bought properties off MLS. It absolutely works. But if you're trying to do volume and find the best of the best deals, is typically it's going to be direct with the homeowner. And so I was doing it all wrong from the start. As soon as I started marketing more direct to homeowner versus making offers on the MLS, I mean, I was making lowball offers and none of them were getting accepted or even close to it. So it was very, very difficult and defeating at first because, like I said, it took me 6 months before I even had a property under contract. And it happened to come from a Zillow property on a fourplex is where that deal came from. And so for anyone who's out there who may be starting to get started in wholesaling, just don't give up, because you're so close. You're one person away from just changing the trajectory of your life. Had I not done that deal, I may have given up because I was so defeated and gosh, this is hard. Like, I'm not a quitter. I'm not going to give up. So if you never stop, you're never going to fail is the way I looked at it.
Yeah. And you don't know how close to the goal you are, right? like, I don't know if you've seen like the pictures on Facebook or whatever, there's two guys digging, right? One is like, they're both so close and one gives up and the other one is like digging like crazy. And obviously that's the one that's going to get to the goal. But you never know. If you quit, you know what's going to happen, right? Nothing pretty much, right? But if you keep going, it's going to eventually work. It has to, right? Through hard work and determination and obviously, improving your skill set and learning the right skill set as well. But
yeah. And one thing to add to that is I think the coaching program was great, but until I found a mentor who was local in my market, who could kind of hold my hand and walk me to seller appointments and actually go meet with people and show me some of the tricks of the trade, like I'm more of a hands-on learner. So until I found that person, so I hired that company, but I also hired a local mentor for a couple grand. And we just split deals. I split the first 6 deals with him. And that's what really helped me, I think, break through and have confidence, is because I actually had that person who was kind of showing me the way to get started.
Yeah. How did you, so looking back now, would you have done things differently or would you have done things exactly the same in terms of how, going to that coaching program and everything that you did through that?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think I would have done things differently, because had I known that if I just went to the meetups to start networking with these people at the real estate groups, I would have learned that all I had to do was just put myself out there and network, and I could have found this same person if I would have started off that way to begin with.
Yeah, I think it's my suggestion is to people, and I'm no expert at it, right? For one, don't buy the course there and then, right? Because they get you hyped up and they want you to go to the back room and sign up there and then, right? It's a sales thing, right? The closer to the sales pitch that they can sign you up, the more likely you are to sign. So you want to give yourself a few days at least and think it over for sure. But then also, like you said, if the course is 20-25 grand, right? You can find someone local in your market that's doing what you want to do, and probably just like you did, right, pay them a few grand, right, and even split deals and make it favorable for them, and that's going to be a lot better than someone that's they're traveling. These people that you took the coaching program, they're probably all over the country, right? Every week they're in a different state, and you're not getting that same hands-on approach and that guidance that you would if you find someone local.
They don't care about you. I shouldn't say this in general, but I feel like they probably aren't going to care about you as much as if they have more of a connection with you locally. Like I don't know about you, Barry, but I like to see people win. I love to see people win. And most people do, especially I found in the real estate spaces. So I was just like, if I had to start over again, I would have went out there and I would have been like, hey, I see that you're doing some good things. It looks like you're looking for deals. I would love to find deals for you. I would love to be able to do deals together and just add as much value as I possibly could to that person. And it's going to come back in the end. You're going to learn from them. It's all going to be amazing, but everything happens for a reason. So there's no regret of doing that, because I wouldn't be to where I am right now had I not, but that's what I would have done differently.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I thoroughly agree with that thought process, right? Things send you on a trajectory that if you were to change that, you might not end up where you are today, right? It's just sometimes it's good to look back and reevaluate, and maybe people can learn from my mistakes and other people's mistakes as well. So I think it's good to that. When you signed up for that course, did you ask your wife first, or did you sign up and put everything on the credit card and be like, hey babe, guess what I did?
No, man, it was a scary phone call. I'm not gonna lie, because my buddy who talked us into going to the second one, he was like, I was trying to talk him into the third one, because I'm like, okay, if these guys are telling us that this is the potential to earn this much money, then I want to do it. And he was like, he was uncertain about it, but I'm like, I can't do this big of an investment without talking to my wife. So I did. I called her up, and that was another thing, honestly, that if you're not on the same page as your wife, especially when you're going to make some sort of a big decision like that, then you're in trouble. So my wife was fully supportive of it. And I honestly, to this day, I can't even believe that she let me do it, because it was such a big amount of money. And we were just broke, graduated from college people, Yeah,
but that's cool. That's awesome that your wife was so supportive, right? Because at that time, like you said, right, that's more than your student debt, right? And you guys are just fresh out of college and trying to figure stuff out at the time, right? You don't know what the future holds for you. And then
just bought a house.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's crazy. But I'm so happy that it did, man. It's awesome, man. It just also shows you, like, to have a bit of faith and have a bit of I don't want to say risk, but, you know, dive in, right? If you believe in something and you're really willing to attack it, right? You've got to go for it, right? I really believe that. Like, people ask me all the time, oh, should I do this? And like with my career, right, I kind of, you know, everything worked out for me, but I'm thoroughly a believer that you've got to dive in and go for it, right? You know, if you go for it, 9 times out of 10, you're going to not regret it. As long as you go for it and really go for it, you're not going to regret it, I don't think.
Oh, 100%. You got to just jump in and it'll figure itself out on the way down, right? Regardless. And the good news is, especially if you're younger, and if you're not, then, you know, maybe it'll be a little bit more risky, but jumping in and you have time to recoup. $20,000 to $25,000 was a lot of money, but I have a feeling that if it wouldn't have worked out, we would be okay. We would have figured it out.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So what was your strategy starting out in wholesaling? Well, you know, because obviously wholesaling is a strategy within real estate, but then in wholesaling, there's a bunch of different strategies on how to get those leads and how to find those motivated sellers, right?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So I was the bandit sign king in my city. I branded my bandit signs Michael Buys Houses, and I wanted everyone in town to know who I was. And so I started getting people like, you know, investors who were pretty recognized at first, like, who the heck is this? Who's this Michael guy who's out there, you know, doing all these signs and stuff like that? And I started getting some calls on them, and I finally got a deal or two from those. I think I did 300, which was a lot to me at first. And I don't do them as much now. They work, but it's just not as clean of a marketing method. But other than that, though, I would go around, and my mentor at the time, he showed me how to drive for dollars. So that's basically just going around. And I did this is because I took a pen and paper and I wrote down the addresses of these properties, who were the distressed properties. And then I would go home and I would look them up on the assessor's website, and I would write on a postcard, and I would handwrite all of the addresses, and I would send them out. I did a couple thousand handwritten just like that. And I got some deals from that. And so I was just doing everything I could. I was grinding. I would see a vacant house driving around town. I would pick up the phone. I would just call the person. I would just say, hey, have you ever considered selling your house? Would you consider an offer for your property? So those are a few of the things that really worked well for me in the beginning. And then naturally, as you progress, you kind of delegate and outsource those things. So now we have a couple cold callers going. We have a virtual assistant who texts for us. I have a guy who puts out the bandit signs. And yeah, just building a little team around our efforts that can really help us out with the lead flow that we were getting.
Yeah, why was it bandit signs that you started off with? That was just what you appealed to you?
I think barrier of entry. I think they're just so cheap. I can speak from both sides of the picture. So I've done bandit signs, and I now have billboards in town.
Okay.
And so I've seen the return on both of them. I know how expensive billboards are, and I know how expensive bandit signs are, and it's night and day. Like, I'm talking $300 for 100 signs to put out. You can get a deal from that. You're doing pretty good. I put out 7 billboards, and we're not talking $300. Like, that's a lot of money, and I got a deal from it. So I'm learning, but holy cow, man, like, the barrier of entry for bandit signs is so cheap compared to some of these other marketing channels that people pay, like for pay-per-click and Google ads and Facebook ads and all these other things.
Yeah. What for people don't know, actually realize this now, what is a bandit sign, right? There might be some people listening. I'm like, what is it a bandit who puts up signs? What is a bandit sign?
It's like when in high school, when, you know, you were mischievous and you'd run around and try to escape. No, I'm just kidding. It's basically a yard sign, right? So it's a yard sign that we call them bandit signs in the real estate spaces because most people, they're frowned upon. People in city enforcement are mad that you're putting them out there. You get threats from the city. Hey, you keep putting these out, we're going to charge you $100 per sign. You even get civilians calling you, frustrated with the fact that you put a sign out there. So they're just frowned upon, really, to be honest.
Yeah. Then with that, did you just put them wherever you could, or is there a method to where you put them and positioning?
That's a good question. So high traffic areas, major intersections, internet or interstate exits, major exits of freeways, highways, and busy streets where people are going to be stopped at a stoplight for a little while, where they can sit and they can look at it. So heavily traffic areas.
Okay, so not along the highway then. You don't put them in the middle.
No,
A
don't
four-lane
put them on
highway.
stop signs.
That's interesting. So you know what always interests me about wholesaling as well is like the negotiation aspect of it, right? Like when negotiation. So did you take any courses in terms of negotiation, or was it just a trial by fire, or was it, how did you learn that skill? Did you work on it, or is with wholesaling, is it more of a numbers game rather than the actual negotiation itself?
I was the case. No, it's absolutely, the more I do this, it's absolutely in negotiations and placement and just psychology and just positioning yourself in front of these people, because there's a lot of other people who are making offers on the properties that we're putting under contract. So we just have to be better than them. So negotiation is a huge part of that. And to answer your question, I've never done a sales course, sales training. I pretty much have my master's degree, I would say, in like a YouTube university for like listening and watching professional sales trainers. I actually signed up for my first sales training course. Have you heard of John Martinez?
No.
So he's a professional sales trainer in the real estate space. We're doing that one in actually it's 2 weeks from now in Dallas, Texas. So I'm excited for that. I think there's a lot to be learned, but to be honest, I actually learned a lot from my mentor who I watched in real life negotiate. You've heard of Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Everyone knows who that is, right? For real estate.
you think so, yeah.
Yeah. That's like the gateway to real estate. But anyway, he actually was a coach. He was a trainer at those seminars. So I just happened to find a person who actually worked hand in hand with Robert Kiyosaki. So I learned a ton of stuff from him. I probably don't give him enough credit, but I learned a lot. And then just throughout the self-development improvement, I've been to not necessarily sales courses, but just like from a company who's scaled their business to $3 million a year. I've went and like held hands with those people and learned from some of the best in the country.
So what are some of the things that you've learned, right? Because everyone wants to get better in negotiation, right? There isn't a single person, me included, who doesn't want to get better in negotiation. What are some things that you've learned that you can kind of, you think that maybe it might be hard to, because maybe you just know it at this point, right? It's maybe not a thing that you think about. It's just a skill that you've honed maybe, but I don't know if you have any tips and tricks that you've learned and picked up along the way.
Well, rule number one with negotiation is never say the first number unless it's completely unrealistically low. And don't blow your cover with your number by saying, my offer is this. Here's what I can offer. Always put yourself in the driver's seat by saying, preparing them, this is going to be so low. I mean, this isn't even going to make sense for you. This number, probably you're going to laugh at me. I mean, do I even have your permission to tell you it's going to be really low? Like I'm warning the person, right? And they're like, all right, just shut up already. Like, how much can you pay? And be like, well, gosh, it's so low. Like, is like 50,000 even something that you would consider? And like, keep in mind, this is $100,000 house. Like, this is way, way low. And be like, oh my gosh, like, no way. That's unreasonable, right? And so, oh yeah, I knew that was unreasonable. Like, that's what I would love to pay, but what would you take? Like, how much do you need, right? And so you're just positioning this, and this is my style of negotiation. And like, if you would do this, like if then statements, right? So like, if I can pay for all the closing costs and you can take what you want, leave what you want, you close on your timeline. Is this something that you would consider? So these are just a few things that come to mind, right?
Yeah. No, that's great.
But you're just positioning yourself so you're not blowing your cover. And one thing that I would say, that if anyone is negotiating on a regular basis like we do, I mean, I just put a property under contract a couple hours ago actually, but it's you always want to know if there's competition, right? You always want to know if there's competition. So, hey, listen, seller, like I know there's a lot of people who do this business. And I'm not the only one who wants to buy your house, right? I'm sure. But I'm just curious, like, do you have any offers yet? They'll tell you, like,
Right.
people will actually tell you. And if they don't, pick and prod. Most people are uncomfortable. And I'm not saying this to be like a pushy salesperson, because I'm the furthest from that. But I'm saying this because it's so funny. People, like the husband in the background, oh, don't tell him how much the other offer was, right? I'm like, all right, come on. Like, was it like 105? Like, they put this out of the water. Where are they at? Oh, 115. Okay. So you're saying is if I could pay you 117,000 today, pay for all closing costs, like, that'd be something that you'd be comfortable moving forward with? Yeah. Okay, perfect. Well, hey, I don't need to talk any further. Like, I'm ready to buy the house if you're ready to sell. So let's go ahead and just get something going here. So then, me being virtual, it sucks. I hope that a lot of the guys in my market don't hear this, because they're gonna be out there on the ground busting their butt trying to get these properties, and I'm just sitting here in Las Vegas in my slippers, and I'm beating them out by $1,000. It's honestly though, it's just crazy. Like, some of the little tips like that, man, it's awesome.
That's cool. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, man, and actually doing some sort of role play as well. Almost, I really enjoy that. It's really always interesting to me. I've listened to a few different ones, and I'm always interested in people's tactics and how it kind of goes. So that's some great pieces of advice there as well, right? I think. And I'm sure you've done thousands of calls at this point, right? So you've got it kind of honed in, but still trying to improve. So I enjoy that. But you said a few times now the virtual aspect of it, right? Does that make it harder, do you think, to be virtual? Because a lot of times isn't it good to go on an appointment personally, or do you think it's helped you to grow maybe to be virtual?
Yeah, it's helped me so much to grow virtual, because it's allowed me to get really kind of sharpen my phone skills a little bit. And trust is a really big thing when you're on the phone. If you've never met some people, because people are really skeptical. We've bought a lot of houses without even seeing people this year. And I'm saying, like our company's actually bought the houses, and nobody had walked the property before even buying it. And did we get pictures? Absolutely. But you have to just make sure that the seller feels your confidence. They feel your trust through your tone, of your tonality and your voice. So that's absolutely important. But it's one of those things, man. It's like trying to ride a bike for the first time. It's like, man, this is so hard. I don't know if I'll ever be able to do this. Maybe that's not a best analogy, but it's one of those things where it's like an acquired taste. Like you at first, it's like, how in the world are you going to buy a house without even meeting the seller? But once you do it, it's like faith to fact again. Like, it's like, oh, that wasn't that bad. Why did I ever go on an appointment before? Why did I waste an hour in traffic, an hour at the house, and an hour to drive home, 3 hours of my day to a person that wasn't even going to sell their house to me in the first place?
So I'm sure you track everything, right? Is your conversion rate similar or close to what it was when you were going on these appointments in person?
I think it's higher. I think that's came with, yeah, I think it's higher. But I guess if you broke down all the numbers, I mean, when I was back in Nebraska going on these appointments, it was probably like 1 in every 4 that were qualified appointments. Nothing crazy. But it's hard to track because I have so many conversations, and a lot of them are qualifying. So it's not really what I would consider an appointment. But I feel like the people who I know from the start who are going to do business with us because they're motivated, I feel like the close is almost higher, because for us, as we have a brand, and I use that to our advantage in the fact that, hey, we're on the Better Business Bureau. We have 45-star reviews on Google. Nobody else in our area has that, at least in my area that I know of. So to be able to have that and use that, the sellers immediately trust you.
Yeah, it's having somewhere that they can check you out, right? You're not just a voice on the phone saying, hey, I'm going to buy your home. You have a track record and somewhere that they can go check you out. That's interesting. Yeah, that's really.
Yeah.
But you would think like people would still be really skeptical over the phone, right? But I'm sure I guess this what you say, right? Is learning that skill and learning that skill of having people trust you, right? And have faith in that you are a real person with a real company that's going to buy their home, right?
Yeah. And another thing that I think is good in sales is like immediately lightening the conversation, saying something completely kind of weird or off the top that's going to make them laugh or kind of lighten up. Like if I completely just cold called somebody out of the blue and I'm like, how much do you want for your house? I'd be like, call me, what, like, what's your offer? Right.
Yeah.
Be like, well, how does like $1 million sound? Does that sound, just like joking around with people, because then it kind of breaks that barrier a little bit. And then people can be like, oh, like this guy, he's just an average dude just joking around with me. So I don't want some like hardcore sales guy like trying to be all slick on me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think if you're overly salesy, I think that immediately puts people's guards up, right? I know it does with me for sure. If you're like overly slick, overly salesy, I'm like, okay, I've got to watch this person, right? Rather than being comfortable with that person.
So we buy houses from a lot of older folks who are downsizing, who've never updated their house, so their house needs some work. And I actually had one 2 weeks ago that was the hardest sell I've ever done before. She was so skeptical, and she told me, she's like, I'm just so skeptical. I've heard of so many scams and this and that. And I'm like, I understand you're so skeptical and this and that. Like, what has you so concerned? So I'm breaking down the barriers and the walls. And we have a clause in our contract that basically allows us to back out all the way up to the date of closing. We would never do that to anyone. But this old sweet lady, she was moving across the country to Florida. Good for her. I should, look at some sunny beach weather like that. No, Vegas is great. But she was so skeptical because we had this clause in there. We had a couple clauses that just had her worried, right? So I'm like, gosh, like this is what's holding this up here. So I'm like, how about this? How about I just take these clauses completely out? We don't have an option to back out now. So that's fine. We never intend to at any time anyway. But that was one that was really hard. I think I worked on her for a week. We were on a verbal agreement. She just wouldn't sign because she was really skeptical.
Yeah. Well, it's understandable, right? It's people's biggest asset a lot of times, their home, right? So I can completely understand. So what is your main lead source now? What do you you said you started out bandit signs, and now you're also doing billboards, right? But what is your main lead source now, you'd say?
Oh man, right now we're getting a lot of traffic through paid advertising online. So we have a website. It's a Carrot website. If anyone's heard of Carrot, it's a real estate investor friendly website. And so we have an online presence in our area, and we're running paid advertisement towards that. So things like pay-per-click on Google. We pay Google ads to search certain keywords. So when somebody says, sell my house fast, Lincoln or Omaha or wherever, our ad comes up. They call us. Facebook ads, we're running different Facebook ads, some video targeted ads to certain lists. And those are probably the best right now for us, is just the online presence, because it's 2020, almost 2021. And people just want to, everyone searches online for everything.
Yeah. Yes. So how, out of interest, and for people who don't know, like what does a typical deal look like? So in terms of how do they they find you online? Do they then call you? Then how many times do you need to speak to them on the phone? And how quickly do you guys close? Like from, what does that look like on an average deal? And I'm sure, you've got tons of different ones, but like an average deal for you.
Yeah, that's a good question. So like you said, everyone is completely different, but for the most part, some of our best deals happen the fastest because they're the most motivated people. It depends on the marketing channel and the motivation, but typically I would say on average, somebody who gets our marketing, because I would consider ourselves, we're just a marketing company. So they get our marketing, they call us. My lead manager intakes the call and qualifies them. If there's somebody who's wanting $200,000 for their $150,000 house, I don't want myself or our salesperson to ever talk to them because it's just a waste of time. So qualify them. And many of these, it's not going to just be like, here's my offer, it's accepted, moving on to the next one. It doesn't work that way. Many of them are in our CRM, and that's how we organize all of our leads, and we're just following up with people. So constantly, every single day, we have people to follow up with. And did we get an appointment? Did we make an offer? Did we follow up on that offer? So it's just a cycle. It's a funnel. And from the day that we make an offer and come to an agreement with that seller, on average, I would say it's about 30 days from start to close. We've had some, I think we did one this month they got a postcard from us. They called us on the postcard. I didn't do this one virtually. I actually had somebody go out to the property. We contracted it, closed in 2 weeks. So, I mean, there are situations like that. And in that cases, we actually sold that contract that I have with that investor. For anyone who doesn't know, in a wholesale deal is we got the contract with the seller, negotiated a price, and we assigned that contract to a new buyer for a profit, for a fee. They closed on it. We never bought the property. We just got paid. And so there's that. And then we also, sometimes we buy them, and we have a remodeling crew who comes in and fixes them up, and we resell them. But typically on a wholesale, it's like from start to finish, 30 days we get paid. On a flip, it's more like depending on 3 to 6 months on a good flip. We got one about 10 months out right now.
Oh, really? What happened with that one?
Just got put on the back burner. We tried selling it as is. We got a good price for it, but we weren't going to make what we knew we could. So we just put it aside. And instead of hiring a different crew and starting from scratch, we waited till our crew finished the project. So we're learning, right? So that one's in escrow.
Okay.
Bought it in February. So.
Okay. Get it done, right?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's really interesting. So for people who don't know, and this whole concept is kind of a little bit new to them, who's buying these properties from you?
So we have a database of investors, and so people that I've met and developed relationships with over the couple of years that I've been doing this. They're investors who do the same exact stuff as us, except for maybe they don't like to prospect and negotiate with sellers. Maybe they just like to come in and just buy from a reputable wholesaler like myself. And it's repeat business. A lot of the people who buy properties from us, they buy a lot of properties. So they know who we are. They know how we operate. They're like, hey, I want to be your first call when you get a property under contract because I want to buy it from you. So I've met people at meetups. I've found people who've called my bandit sign saying, hey, I want to buy a property for cash. And so they're everywhere. People will tell you that if you can find a deal, you'll find an investor.
Yeah.
And that's 100% true.
Yeah. Everyone wants a good deal, right? There's nobody out there who doesn't want a good deal. So if you're finding good deals, you're not going to be short of the buyers. But out of interest, from a wholesaler's perspective, right? Who do you decide? So you've got a buyer's list of what, 50, 100 people, 100 investors?
Yeah. And it just depends on the market, but really probably 50 to 100 people who are actually reputable, solid buyers. The rest of the 200 to 300 people that I have on the list, nothing against them, but they're more wholesalers and they're more people who actually are probably never going to make an offer on the property.
Yeah. So then how do you decide? You just mail that. So you get a property under contract, you want to sign that contract and have an investor come in and buy it. Do you just send it out to 50 to 100 people, or do you have a handful of people that get there first?
It just depends. As an investor, I don't want to ever get in a bidding war with somebody. That's not what you want, because you're going to pay more than you should. I'm doing that right now in a primary residence, which you know about.
Yeah.
But honestly, it's kind of a per case deal, or a per house deal, because in some situations, I know that the seller's not going to be very happy about many people going through. So I may have like my top like 3 or 4 people go through and make an offer. If I feel I maybe contracted a little too high and I know it's going to be a tight spread, I may just blast it out to everyone in my database. And in that case, I would just send a text message saying, hey, I got a deal in this area. If you're interested, reply. And I'll send all the information, pictures, all the information they really need. And then they'll raise their hand and be interested in making an offer if it's for them.
Yeah, because I was always interested how wholesalers decide who they send out their deals out, because they've got a good list, right? They're good ones anyway. So how do you become, for someone who wants to invest and wants to work with investors, right? How do you become someone that you want, that the wholesalers are going to send the good deals to? How do you become that person?
You do what you say you're going to do, and try not to. You gotta buy deals correctly. So I wouldn't say you should negotiate with the wholesaler a little bit, because I absolutely would, because I do it myself now that we're buying. Yeah. But respect that the wholesalers who are doing a lot of business spend a lot of money on marketing, so they work really hard to find those deals. So try to be as fair as you can, and follow up with them. Treat them like a prospect. My best buyers, they touch base with me almost every other week. Hey, hey, Michael, how's it going? Anything in the pipeline? How are you doing? And it's the relationship thing. It's not like I'm just doing this because I want your business. Maybe in some people's cases, but for the most part, the relationships that I have are like I'm sending them a Christmas card. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like they're good, good quality people who mean well, and they make it very well known that they want to be my preferred buyer.
So someone starting out, right? Someone who just is starting it, he's a buy and hold, or he's a fix and flip, whatever it is, right? And he wants to work with a wholesaler like yourself. What tips would you suggest for them to, what actions do they need to take, and what things do they need to have lined up to gain credibility?
Okay. Good point. So they definitely need to have financing in place. That's most important. And then they need to know what they're looking for. If they don't have a criteria of what they're actually looking for, how are you going to know what to send them? Or how do you know that this person wants rental properties in Class A neighborhoods for this price point, this rent, or these numbers? Every property that I put on a contract isn't going to fit everyone's criteria. So that's first and foremost, is what are you looking for, right? And then financing. If I'm going to send somebody a deal and they tell me they're going to buy it, I sure hope that they show up to closing and perform. So that's important. So those are probably like the two that come to my mind. I'm probably missing some, but
yeah, no, that was some of the things that definitely the financing, right? Because obviously, hey Michael, I'm going to buy a deal from you. Okay, cool. Well, how are you financing it, right? How are you going to pay for it? Do you have cash? Do you have financing? I'm guessing a lot of people they're financing these through hard money lenders, right, or private money lenders, right? So what do they need to have lined up? Do hard money lenders have pre-approval letters? What can they have to kind of give to you or show to you that they're serious?
Yeah, they definitely have pre-approval letters. They can get a proof of funds if needed. Those are pretty helpful. For the people who buy deals from me before, they don't do that anymore. But if you're just starting out and you want somebody to take you serious, you should probably have a proof of funds very handy for them for that specific of a deal. So they know that they can trust you to perform.
Yeah. And then does track record matter? You experience working with contractors? Do you want to know if they have contract lined up, or is it simply more of a case of, hey, can these guys close, and that's about it?
Honestly, I don't really care if they have contractors lined up or not. I think track record is important, but not the end of the world. I understand everyone starts somewhere, but I will say if somebody is making an offer with a hard money loan that's never got a hard money loan before and isn't very confident in their skill to get that loan, and there's a guy over here who has cash and he makes an offer for $20,000, the person with the hard money makes an offer for $22,000, I may take the lesser offer because I know that person's going to perform. I've done it before. I've sold to people who are repeat customers for less of a price, as silly as that sounds, because I wasn't fully confident in the other person's ability to perform.
Yeah, you need that certainty of closing, right? It's very similar to wholesalers are very similar to brokers in multifamily or commercial, right? Because those brokers, they want the same thing. They want certainty of closing, right? They want to know that this guy that's going to put the deal in the contract is going to close. And also the sellers will do the same thing in multifamily or in commercial, because they might take a lower offer, but the last thing they want is to drag something out for 90 days and then for the buyer to not perform and have to put it back on the market, go through the process again, drag people through the units, all that stuff. So certainty of closing is something that's, I think, very important. So it's interesting to hear you say that, because there's a lot of similarities of what you say to how brokers look at things in commercial. So have you, out of interest as well, have you worked with anyone buying primary residence, or is it just all no, never?
One time, and that was the last time.
Oh, really?
Because I mean, our job and the value that we provide, to a seller, why would anyone sell their house for 50 cents on the dollar, right? That's a question that realtors ask me, people ask me all the time, like, why in the world are you scamming these people? Why are these people selling you for so cheap? And the answer to that is because they have a problem and we have a solution for that problem. And that solution is typically speed and convenience. If somebody comes to me and says, oh, I'd sell in like 4 or 5 months, like, that's probably not somebody I'm going to buy a house from. So we're solving that problem, and it's any good investor's responsibility to fulfill that promise to the seller that, hey, you're going to close in 30 days because I'm going to foreclose on my house, right? Or whatever the case may be. And so in the case that I sold to a person who actually ended up moving into it, it was one of my first deals, and it just happened to be contracted a little too high for an investor, but there was a handyman who saw it, and he wanted to live in there and fix it up, and the numbers made sense. And so in that case, we made it work, but it's not ideal, because when you get somebody who's not familiar or has the cash, there's more contingencies, there's more hoops to jump, and it makes it a little bit more challenging. But I've heard of people doing it quite often. Braver than me, though.
Because obviously if someone buying it to live in it, they can pay a little bit more than an investor, right? They're not looking for the ARV to be whatever 75%, the all-in cost to be 75% of ARV, right? Is that roughly what flippers are looking at to be at?
Yeah, ideally 75% is a good number. It depends on the market. Like Las Vegas, I've seen in we've done wholesales where the person paid up to 80% or maybe even 81, which is getting pretty steep, but the houses are a little bit more expensive. So that 20% discount goes a little further than maybe a 20% discount on a $100,000 house. So in my market in the Midwest, we shoot for 70%, and 70% is a pretty good number. That's where people like to be typically.
Okay, yeah. So there's a higher margin, right? But a lower purchase price as well. So it's kind of works out, I guess.
Yeah, and to kind of go back to what you had said is, do you sell to retail buyers? On a wholesale basis, no, we try not to. We want to only sell to people who are paying cash, or at least have a line of credit that's going to be a little bit quicker transaction. But what's working really well in this market is selling our deals on the retail market. And what I mean by that is we actually buy them and close on them ourselves, and then we list it with the real estate agent. So we buy it, we clean out the property, we list it on the retail market, and instead of a wholesale, and the difference between a wholesale and a retail is now it's a wholesale, which is the combination of the two. And now we're maximizing our price because we're selling to people who aren't buying from wholesalers, or people who are going to live in the property, like the handyman, and they're going to pay typically quite a bit more than an investor.
Well, those deals are stuff that doesn't need much work, right? They're just stuff that you just can clean up pretty quickly, and they look like anything else that you'd find on the MLS, right?
Pretty much. Yeah. Not completely termite infested and destroyed like a wholesale deal might be sometimes. So.
Cool, man. Yeah. Well, what you've also, I think you've also bought some buy and hold deals as well, right? Tell me about them a little bit.
Oh man, I was hoping you'd ask. I was going to show you a picture, but I didn't know how quickly I could find it. So I got a really fun one that I want to talk about. And this isn't a buy and hold, but I'll piggyback into the buy and hold. It's a 21 unit apartment building, and I actually bought it and sold it a year ago from like right before Christmas. What happened is it was a fire damaged property, and my buddy worked for the fire department, and so he told me about it, and so I contacted the seller, and we got this property under contract, and we had it resold again to another person, and I bought it sight unseen, and one of the buildings was burned down, completely burned down, and I bought it with hard money, and it was the biggest risk I think I've ever taken to date, and I'm so happy it worked out because I didn't have a plan. I didn't have an exit. If I would have got stuck with it, I would have figured it out, but I knew that I had a buyer willing to pay 100 over what I had it under contract for. So I'm like, okay, in order to make this work, I got to buy it. He's already got a purchase with me to sell it. So then I sold it, and we did pretty well on it, but I paid out a few different people to make it, make sure everyone was taken care of. But that was a pretty fun deal last year.
Yeah, with that one, was there any insurance involved in there? Was the seller giving you any credit that the insurance company was giving, or was it just?
So the seller took the insurance money and he ran with it.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, he got paid big time because he got paid for the properties because there were 3 7 units, and then he got the insurance money, but they were run into the ground. Like one of the tenants started a rug on fire outside the apartment, and it burned the whole building down.
Wow.
So that was a fun one. That's not a buy and hold, but I'm part owner of, I'm a 50-50 owner on 12 units in Lincoln, close to the University of Nebraska. And that was a foreclosure situation. And we actually bought 18 units, and we flipped one of them. We flipped 6, and we kept the 12. And so my business partner, bless him for doing the rehab. That was just a beast of a project. So he headed the rehab, and the seller actually, we caught the loan up, and we actually used the seller's financing until we were able to flip the 6-plex because there were 3 of them. And so we took that money and pretty much parked it back into the other 12 to be able to fund the $150,000 rehab that it was to get it up to par.
Nice. And you still own that 12 unit now?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So, yeah.
What's next for you, man? Like, just continue wholesaling and continue grow your wholesaling business, or maybe move into the Vegas market for wholesaling?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, this year I'm gonna give it a better shot at getting more active in the Vegas market. When I moved out here, I was really ambitious. I started networking quite a bit and meeting people, but we just didn't take it as serious as we needed to compete out here. We've made offers and stuff like that, but we just didn't take it as serious as we needed to. And so I think this year the focus is going to be being in more markets and then building a team out and trying to get myself more out of the day-to-day operation, because as it sits right now, I'm extremely involved with everything. So my goal is to be actually in 12 markets, very active, heavily wholesaling. And so we would use the cash from those markets to be able to put into multifamily property. So my goal is to own multifamily, large multifamily property.
Smart. That's a good place to park your money. Multifamily. I'm a big fan, as you know. Well, cool, man. Really interesting, man. Really interesting what you've done, and starting from that early beginnings of the 3-day, and then going all in on that, course and coaching program, to finding a mentor, to then, doing bandit signs, and then now having billboards and just kind of growing and, finding great deals and honing your skills as well at the same time, right? Just keep learning. And as you mentioned, you're even going to a coaching program in a few weeks to kind of learn and improve those skills. So I think that's awesome, man. And then hopefully you'll have thousands of dollars at some point in terms of multifamily as well. So that's really cool.
That's the plan, right? I gotta get on that level. Yeah. I gotta stop thinking small. So
yeah, you can do enough for sure. But as this show is called Wrestling with Real Estate, I always like to ask some wrestling related. real estate questions. So the first one is, what would your wrestling name be? If you picked a wrestling name for yourself, what would it be?
Oh man, that's a good question. I was thinking about this, but honestly, I I had a few people in high school call me Big Mac, so I'm gonna go with Big Mac.
Okay.
I'm not a big guy, obviously, but I was a fullback in high school football, so I'm gonna go with Big Mac.
Okay, I like that, Big Mac. So every wrestler has a special move, right? It's that when they hit that move, the match is over because it's their biggest strength. What is your special move in real estate? What is your biggest strength?
My biggest strength, I think, is just getting people to like and trust me, and especially with sellers, is I feel like one of my biggest things for every person that we do business with is I want them to tell other people about us, so to give us a positive review. So I would say it's just like just being likable, trustworthy, kind of goes hand in hand.
Yeah, that's a great skill, because obviously trust and being genuine and having people like you is huge, right? If you can get your foot in the door through using that, that's huge, I think. What's been the biggest body slam you've taken?
Biggest body slam. Gosh, man, I've been so lucky so far. I hate that word luck, but I've taken some pretty big risks, like that apartment building risk, for example. The biggest body slam, oh man, that's tough. We broke even on a deal. I mean, that's not even a bad thing, but we rehabbed a house and we broke even. And you know how it is when you put a lot of effort into a project, and if you don't make any money, it's kind of defeating. So that's a small body slam, because I know there's people who've lost tens of thousands of dollars in this business. So knock on wood, but yeah, that's really what I would say for that.
Okay, yeah, that's not a bad thing, right? It's just if you break even, that's the worst thing. That's that's pretty good. So keep that up, man. Keep that up. That's a good record to be able to keep. So was there a moment that you were standing on the top rope, getting ready to jump, but you were too scared? What was it, and how did you overcome it?
Man, that's tough. One of my biggest fears, and this is going to sound kind of silly because I have a podcast, is public speaking. And so one of my biggest fears was putting myself on a very large platform. And I actually interviewed on Wholesaling Inc., which has tens of thousands of members. Have you heard of Wholesaling Inc. podcast?
No.
So it's a wholesaling podcast, and I was asked to be a guest on there. So I interviewed on that podcast, and there's 30-some thousand people on there. So that was kind of scary for me, but I think the lesson is just face your fears, because honestly, so many good things have came from being able to do that. And just by starting a podcast and being a guest on other people's podcasts, I've met so many great people. But that was scary to me. I think public speaking is scary for a lot of people.
Yeah, me included. And I'm not even same thing, right? People they think you have a podcast, or you're a wrestler, or you do Cirque du Soleil, you're a performer, but still public speaking is I don't know if it's my accent, or I sometimes think in a different language, because I speak Welsh as my first language. So sometimes I get a little paranoid about it. And again, we create situations in our head, right? I speak about this all the time. I think we make things worse in our head, right? If you have a public speaking engagement, well, shit, you're going to, me anyway, 2 weeks before, I'm going to be sweating bullets, worrying about everything I'm going to say. I'm thinking about every reason why it's going to go wrong, right? But in reality, once you've done it, it's amazing, right? You step into that discomfort and you get through it, and you're like, wow, that was that was awesome. You actually kind of enjoy it, and it's in thrill. It makes you feel thrilled that you kind of pulled it off, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You faced your fear, and now you've overcome that to an extent. Now you can do it over and over again. And it's not like we're just getting on a podcast or doing a podcast just to look at me, right? It's I have a story, I have value to provide, and I hope that people who've listened to this today feel that I've provided some value, because that's what it's all about. It's I've been fortunate enough to break through kind of the struggle of getting started in real estate, and now I want to turn around and help others kind of break through as well. So it's just so much fun to be on this journey and get to meet so many cool people.
Yeah, for sure, man, for sure. Well, I appreciate you sharing your journey. I think sharing everything that you've done, and a lot of stuff that you've learned along the way, right? I think you gave a lot of great information today, man, and for sure, it's cool to hear what you've been able to achieve, right? But before we go, do you want to give some people an idea where they can find out more about what you've got going on, what you've been up to, and kind of also if they want to get a hold of you, how can they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So as Barry mentioned in the beginning, he was on my podcast last week. So I have a podcast called Rocket REI Live Podcast. It's on YouTube. We record those streams live weekly, pretty much weekly. I'm starting to try to get better and keep up with Barry on how many podcasts I'm doing. But so yeah, I do that live. And then I have a Facebook page, Rocket REI as well. And you can find me on Instagram at Michael Buys Houses. So feel free to follow my journey there, connect with me, send me a personal message. I love helping people, so more than happy to help.
Cool. And he sells a coaching program for 25 grand as well for you guys.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Can you put the link in the...
Yeah, he takes credit cards as well. So awesome. Well, hey, cool, man. Thank you so much for making time today to be on the show and share your story and share everything that you've shared. And yeah, have an awesome rest of your day. And we're going to catch up soon, right, in person, play some pickleball.
That's right. Awesome, Barry. Thanks again, man. I appreciate it.